Tell me about your friend Vaclav Smil.
My friend. I mean, that's been surreal getting to know him.
Yeah.
Not just with respect to Vaclav, but just some of the people that we've been working with and interacting with. And that's been crazy.
For today's episode of Energy Untold, I was lucky enough to speak with Graeme Edge. Graeme leads an executive search company here in Calgary and is also one of the co-founders of Energy Disruptors. We spoke about the conference, how it's evolved over time, a few energy issues, and how many teas he has in a given week. Hope you enjoy this conversation with Graeme Edge. Well, before that I was doing real time, but real time is a little bit, there was a bunch of time off.
Yeah.
It was like, I was talking to someone about it lately, like what the actual schedule was. It was like 2 days, 2 nights, 2 or 3 days off, and then it was like 2 days, 1 night off.
Yeah.
Or sorry, 2 days, then 1 night, a couple days off, and then like 1 day, 2 nights, and then start the whole thing over again. Something like that.
So out of curiosity, if you think of, let's say, 100 traders start their career early to mid-20s, how many will trade their whole career all the way to 60 or 65 out of that 100?
Oh, that's a great question. Be a pretty small number.
Like,
because either
2%, 5%?
Well, there's like, I guess there's 3 scenarios, right? You get spit out immediately.
Yeah.
You do fabulously well.
Yeah.
And then you're basically
something
done.
else. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess the third would be that scenario where you're like addicted to action.
Yeah. The journeyman PGA pro.
Yeah.
Where you just can't quit it.
But even then, it feels like you wouldn't be in an organization. You'd be just doing
it on your own.
Yeah. Just like completely on your own.
There's no 40-year traders at big companies.
No. Because like at that point, you'd be doing it because you needed the money, probably.
That's a very expensive lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that'd be...
It's a bit like executive search. There are some parallels to search,
well, it's probably just anything like somewhat commission-based, right?
Exactly. If you're really good, normally you'll get to a point where you go, right, I'm going to do something else.
Yeah.
There's the odd person who's maybe addicted to the lifestyle or the job.
Yeah.
But the majority, that's why I'd be interested to compare search and trading. There are some parallels.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah. Do you, how much of your day is spent on search these days?
At the moment, probably 20% of my time.
Okay.
But last year was an anomaly.
And how much, what percent of income?
Yeah, like 100%. It's quite an important 20%.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been one of the things about Energy Disruptors is it's not a financially sensible business.
Yeah.
Not yet. I think that we've just poured all the money back in.
Yeah.
You hope at a point that it becomes, I don't know. I have a belief.
COVID kind of fucked up the momentum.
Totally fucked up I mean, we basically lost 3 years because of COVID. So we started it 7 years ago.
Yeah.
But in some ways, it does truly feel like we lost 3 years.
Can you imagine a virtual Energy Disruptors?
We tried to.
Did you?
Oh yeah, and we just decided we don't want to do that. Yeah, it just.
That would be god awful.
I think particularly Holly, Michelle, and I went. Yeah, it just doesn't excite us whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And remember early COVID, there was this thing where everyone's like, virtual's going to be as good as in person and everyone's going to stay virtual. And it's, now we're seeing that was bullshit, basically.
Yeah.
No one doing webinars is, I think, engaging people.
No.
So.
I'm just picturing a fucking Zoom grid screen of like 50 people.
Yeah, there's PTSD with that, isn't there?
40 that have their cameras off. It's just like, oh my God.
Yeah, that was it. That was like 2 years of that.
What about this year's event? What's going on? What can you tell us? What can you tell me?
Well, we're 4.5 months out.
Yeah.
You're catching me at this like really interesting moment where.
Is it going to happen or are you going to cancel it?
No, it's definitely happening.
Okay.
Yeah, I can confirm that. Come hell or high water, it's happening. We're too far into it to. At this point, there's no way you can cancel. I think the hard thing at the moment is we know it's the beginning of almost like the madness season for the team, where it's just you're getting hundreds of requests almost on a daily basis.
Requests for what?
Speakers, tickets.
Oh, speakers asking to be?
Yeah, every
Okay.
manager. We probably get 5 to 10 speaking requests a day. And that's difficult because you're having to kind of manage egos, and ultimately you're going to having to say no to a lot of people, but in a way where
everyone has
polite.
Well, what percentage of those people have an agenda? 90%?
Probably 90% of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Weirdly, we tend to go for people who haven't asked us to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a scenario there where we're kind of more focused on. Occasionally someone reach out and we go, oh, we didn't know about this person, and that would be a great fit.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's a good sign that people are reaching out wanting to be on the stage. So we're trying to figure out the agenda.
Yeah.
We're kind of ramping up all
How many? It's 2 days?
It's 2 days, yeah. So October 1st and 2nd.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
And we like running it on that cadence. We like kind of the start of the week. We're moving to the new BMO Center.
Yeah.
So
have you been inside yet?
I was in on Friday.
Okay.
So I was...
Is it a good building?
I've probably been one of the few people who's seen it finished.
Okay.
I'd seen it under construction 4 months ago.
Yeah.
Had the tour.
Yeah.
It is pretty much finished, yeah. It opens on June 5th officially.
Okay.
And what I can say is, am I allowed to swear on your podcast?
I did a couple times, so
okay.
If you don't, I don't think I'm really getting the authentic Graeme.
Fucking spectacular.
Okay.
Like, it's really amazing.
We didn't fuck it up?
We didn't fuck it up.
Okay.
So if you think about the new central library,
yeah,
it's almost got a kind of Scandinavian vibe to it. A bit like your offices, right? Very clean.
It's not kind of. The architects are Scandinavian.
They're Scandinavian, right? I was quite surprised that the new BMO has that kind of feeling inside. So I was a little bit worried that it was going to be very Western.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's not. There's touches, so really nice touches.
Okay.
Recognizing the Western
so like just
heritage.
Some hat tips and
there's little tips to the heritage, but it's 10 out of 10 is how I'd rate it. It's one of the most spectacular buildings I've ever seen.
You don't give out 10s.
It's so good. It literally blew me away.
Okay.
How good it was. Okay. Michelle and I were in there Friday. It's remarkable. I think people are going to be mind blown. I'm going to predict it now. It's going to win a bunch of awards.
Okay.
Because the design of the building's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But the attention to detail on the interior and the selection of the color palettes.
Who was really in charge of this project? Like,
so CMLC, so Calgary Municipal Land Corp, I think are the overall project manager, and they have responsibility for delivering infrastructure, similar to what they did for the Central Library.
Yeah.
And then they've got PCL and a bunch of others.
Sure.
I don't know who the architects are, or there'll be a bunch of firms obviously involved.
Yeah.
But they've done it remarkably well.
Okay. How does it compare feel wise to what's the convention center in downtown Vancouver, the one that was built for the Olympics?
Oh,
it kind of looks up to the
by the marina.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's some Vancouver people, they're going to hate this, but it's way better.
Okay.
Way, way better than the Vancouver Convention Center.
Just in what way? You walk in, you just get a sense of place.
It's more modern. It's just, it's kind of a cooler design. It's not what you expect. Normally with these convention centers, you get the big trade show halls, and that's kind of it, right? And there's a few breakout rooms.
Yeah.
Typically, it's going to be on one level, possibly 2 levels.
Yeah.
This is the part of the building's 3 stories. And it's just got architectural interest, and it's kind of an unexpected design that really works.
So compared to previous years, is it more square footage, or about the same, or how can they partition the space?
We can massively flex up and down.
Oh, okay.
So what we're doing is, so the downstairs part of BMO, roughly, I think there's 5 or 6 huge trade halls.
Yeah.
And these would be 100,000 square feet halls. So I think there's 1 million square feet. To put that into context, where we have done disruptors historically is at the Big Four. It's like 60,000 square feet.
Yeah.
But we're using upstairs, the grand ballroom alone where we're hosting the main summit.
Yeah.
You can have 4,500 people in that room. So it is huge. And the ceilings are 35, 40 feet.
Okay.
It's just, but I was worried it was going to feel cavernous.
I was
and
going to say, so how do
soulless.
you maintain some sense of intimacy?
Somehow they've created intimacy with how they've designed it in the color palette and the details in the ceiling. And, you know, some people might get annoyed, but they've got kind of bronze doors upstairs. Mm-hmm. There's real warmth to the textures.
Yeah.
It feels almost quite homely, which really surprised me.
Okay.
Anyway, it's spectacular.
That's great. Okay, so it's there.
So it's there, October 1st and 2nd, 3,000 people.
You don't know the agenda. You still have to work
Roughly,
this out.
We just released yesterday the first version of the agenda.
Okay.
It's at energydisruptors.com.
Okay.
It's pretty loose right now. It's like, yeah, exactly. It's pretty, I'd say it's 30%, 40% designed.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of stuff, right? There's stuff on energy security. There's stuff around this year's kind of geopolitical super cycle.
Yeah.
Stuff on scaling up mining for energy transition.
Yeah.
The whole materials challenge of energy transition. There's things around the future of fuels. It's really quite like usual. It's pretty eclectic program.
So previously you were a little bit afraid of doing something more regular, and it's within just the past several months that you kind of changed your tune, right? So
it's financial desperation, basically.
Necessity.
It's financial. No.
Well, I mean, when we talked before, you were kind of afraid of just running something out there annually and didn't feel like there was enough going to be changing. But that doesn't seem to be the right thesis.
No, I don't think it's the right thesis. So we had it was mainly my fault, but we kind of went, okay, we're going to move to annual.
Yeah.
And I then signed a 10-year commitment with the Stampede without necessarily fully consulting Michelle. And Michelle's like, what the fuck are you doing? Are we seriously doing this every year for the next decade?
Yeah.
But I think it was this necessity because we'd cobbled together a team.
Yeah.
Do the summit. It would take so much out of us. And then we'd disappear for, 2 years and then try to bring it back.
Half the learnings are gone. And
the learnings are gone. It's really hard to plan the summit. Mm-hmm. From a financial perspective, it's really difficult as well. So I think it was this combination of, we could then make the investments in the business that we needed to move to annual cycle.
Okay.
And I think our biggest challenge is going to be just keeping it fresh and how do we continue to engage people. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad challenge to have.
No, I don't think so. I mean, even as you list off this program, there's like some overlapping stuff from previous years, but I think there's enough angles that you basically have 3 or 4 themes every day for those 2 days, and then the next year can be completely different.
Well, here's a good example on the content. So September 2022 is the last one. Mm-hmm. No one was talking about generative AI. Yep. It wasn't even really a thing at that point.
Yeah.
It will be quite an important part of this year's programming.
Yeah.
And all the kind of energy demand side of AI and what it means for grids and infrastructure. And,
mm-hmm.
We've both seen the demand curves for power for these data centers. So that wasn't even a thing. So I think there's going to be things that will just surprise us on an ongoing basis.
Yes, enough within a year that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
For this year, how are you, compared to previous years, you've also interjected speakers that are a change of pace or not necessarily somebody you would expect at an energy conference. What does that look like this year?
Yeah, so
can you even say?
No, I think we can.
Yeah.
I think how we frame this is most energy-related events you go to talk heavily about new technologies, about economics as well, mm-hmm. which are really critical. But one of the things that we're also passionate believers in is the social, the cultural, the political consequences of energy transition and opportunities are really, really important. And really you're almost talking about societal behavioral change mm-hmm. as well.
Yep.
And so what we've tried to do is bring speakers that can really speak to those parts of the program who are coming from outside of the world of energy.
Yep.
So the Malcolm Gladwells, the Adam Grants. This year also we're 1 month ahead of the US election. So there's going to be a bit more of a political bent to some of the commentary. Mm-hmm. But I think what we realized was if you have current politicians on the stage, there's really very little they can say.
Yep.
In that type of forum. They can say more behind closed doors. So that we were quite intentional about then bringing Jacinda Ardern and Sanoma in for that reason.
Yeah.
There's one other person that is more in the realm of a Malcolm Gladwell and Adam Grant
Yeah.
that I can't announce until kind of late August, early September.
Sure.
But it's someone who is
Prominent.
Prominent, one of the most incredible thinkers on the planet right now.
Yep.
So we're really, really excited about that. And then there's some other people that we're working on that I would put in the moonshot category of people that if we're able to land them.
Mm-hmm.
And these are people that basically you would have to reach them directly, have trusted people make the introduction, and it's got to be a really good use of their time. And so we're working on a couple of those that are quite promising.
I'm trying to think back to your point about like a current politician isn't really going to say anything interesting, but somebody who's out of the game slightly will.
Yep.
It's kind of the same thing with a corporate leader, right? Like they'll have to kind of toe the company line. I was actually thinking this morning, it's kind of incredible that Andy Jassy was here, right, when he was leading AWS. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yep.
How do you think about that? Like, so like a corporate leader is going to either you ask them or they're going to ask you. How do you kind of shape the programming around that? Because it's like to have somebody kind of stale and then towing the company line on stage is not optimal.
No, it's not optimal, and it is tricky because part of the summit is obviously we need big corporates to be engaged and support it and sponsor the event. We've had a model where basically the production costs, we try to raise enough sponsorship to cover the full delivery of the event.
Yeah.
And then we're basically reinvesting all of the money back into Summit to grow it and better lineup, better venue, higher production value. But with that comes attention because you've got big companies who want to say certain things on stage.
Yeah.
And it is challenging, right? Because you're trying to get beneath almost the corporate speak and the communication speak.
You almost need the founders or executives that are made. You know, you would think like Elon
teams,
going bananas and doesn't really give a fuck.
Yeah.
Would have like changed the norms across the industry, but hasn't really that much.
I think it's maybe done the opposite, where people have looked at the backlash.
Yeah.
And gone, actually, I want to keep my head below the parapet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like energy transition this is a really divisive topic.
Yeah.
So I can totally understand why those corporate leaders probably are reticent to say a whole lot with a whole substance. And by the way, it's not like we've seen that across the board. We've seen some corporate leaders who have really shown up and really properly engaged and gone beyond the comms piece.
Yeah. So like, can you think of a few names that kind of connected with the audience that you were kind of surprised by?
Do you know, I won't throw out names on the corporate side, but what I can say is we see like wild variations in the partners.
Yeah.
So we'll have some partners who want to have 5 briefing calls and they want line of sight on all the questions.
Yeah.
And we will not do that. We'll talk about what themes we're willing to cover, but we're not telegraphing the questions. And what we try to do is say to that partner, look, us telegraphing the session it's not going to lead to a good session.
Right.
So I think as we've built more trust with those partners, they're kind of loosening up a bit and they're recognizing we're not trying to just catch them out for the sake of it. We're actually trying to have a deeper conversation.
Yeah.
What I also notice is when you've got some of those leaders who are showing up and seeing some of the programming, when they get on stage, they seem to be willing to say more. If someone's showing up 10 minutes before their stage time, it can be, they're maybe not showing up in the right way. But that's rare. I'd say 2/3 of the corporate leaders who are showing up in the right way. And it's getting better every year.
Connected to this, what makes Holly so world-class in your view?
So, okay.
Or is that too
Holly is so for the listeners who don't know, so Holly's one of my Energy Disruptors co-founders. I actually met Holly at an event in the UK back in late 2016. What's so crazy about Holly is how she can weave all these random threads together and somehow bring simplicity to the message, but not oversimplify.
Okay.
So Holly's got this incredibly think on her feet. She is probably the most hardworking person I've ever met. She's incredibly dedicated to her craft.
Yeah.
So what you don't see behind the scenes, Holly is a student of public speaking and is obsessed with her craft. She's absolutely obsessed with getting better at what she does.
Yeah.
So I think that it's this combination of incredible work ethic, incredible curiosity and passion for engaging with an audience and storytelling. And then the other side of it would be incredible habits and the self-discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of North Star from a values perspective. So when you combine all that together, that's why on the other side of it, you get why probably is, Holly's the best event MC in the world. And that is why, because when you start those four things together, you then have this ridiculous outcome.
What was her reaction to we're doing this thing every year for 10 years?
She's pumped. Like Holly's, so if you think about, I don't know whether you've heard the entrepreneurial kind of example of you've got the gas, the steering, and the brake.
Mm-hmm.
Holly and I are mashing the gas pedal at all times. So we're quite similar, right? I'd say Michelle is more steering and we don't really have a brake, which is a bit of a problem.
But you need really good brakes to go fast.
Yeah.
Corner.
I suppose we don't use them. Yeah, exactly. If you just slightly steer.
Yeah.
So yeah, Holly's definitely always like, let's just go for it and move forward.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And in between events, you guys see each other in person 1 or 2 times. Is that kind of the case?
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the logistical challenges. Holly lives in Melbourne.
Yeah.
I would say Holly and I probably speak pretty much every day. So we'll go out on FaceTime or WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Michelle and Holly would speak maybe every couple of days.
Okay.
But we'll see. It's weird, right? We'll see Holly maybe every 18 months. We just saw her. She was in Calgary.
Oh, great.
About 2 weeks ago. We went out to Banff and kind of hung out and did some planning for the summit.
Oh, that's great.
But we'd love to see her more.
Yeah. What are some of the brands and other events that inspire you for disruptors? Because the way I would describe it is you're entering a space and there's certainly a vibe to it, an energy to it that is intentional and very, very different. So how did that come to be?
So initially there wasn't a reference point really. So it's kind of interesting. I think none of our team had an events background.
Yeah.
Which led to some gigantic fuck ups that almost killed us. Like real face plants where you go, oh my God, we're never going to recover from this.
Yeah.
But on the strength side of things, we weren't contained by almost the rules of traditional events. Mm-hmm. And I think we'd been to enough events as a team in energy where we kind of went, this is pretty
We're going to define ourselves by what we're not.
Yeah, we kind of went, okay, we're going to be the opposite of this.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped us. So it was less about when we started who we were inspired by. It was more, how do we not want to show up? Mm-hmm. Now it's different because we have more reference points. So one of the events that really intrigues us, we haven't been to this event yet, is called Slush, which is one of the leading startup events in Europe. It's in Helsinki in November. And it just looks ridiculous and insane. And so we're kind of intrigued by Slush at the moment. It's the latest that we're kind of watching what they're doing.
That's funny. And then you've certainly carried on a lot of brand ingredients, but it's also evolved slightly year by year, I would say, and just kind of watching things evolve.
Yeah, this year I think we've really done more work on, okay, why are we doing this? When we went to annual, I think as a team we sat down and went, okay, are we really going to go to annual? When we set this up, it wasn't going to build an events business. It was really trying to drive cultural change in energy and create hopefully an incredible asset for the city of Calgary long term.
Yeah.
And it was almost like revisiting our roots and going, okay, we got to focus on that. That's the North Star. That's why we're getting out of bed in the morning. It's not to try and build a traditional events business.
Yeah. I guess going back to the actual content of the event, it is energy.
Yeah.
What are some of the stuff that you're kind of interested and excited about these days in the space?
I think it feels like really messy and complex at the moment. I'm super intrigued by what's happening with EVs right now. So if I look at Asia and particularly China as a market and go, you're seeing real EV scale up, a lot of new sales, kind of the rise of Chinese manufacturers, Tesla facing more competition in China, but all boats are rising to some extent. But then we're getting.
I've got views on this.
Yeah. You tell me. I'm curious. What do you think of the whole Chinese EV thing?
Well, as we record this morning, the U.S. announced. So tariffs are going from 25% to 100%.
Yeah.
I think there's a good probability that Trump puts them up to probably like 200%.
Yeah. He's going to try and squeeze them out of the North American market.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Trump is getting elected.
Yeah.
Right now it's even odds, and I don't understand that. But anyway, that's.
Yeah.
Odds are set where
I think you're right.
markets line up to be equal, right? Like that's just how Vegas works. But it's funky. It's so culturally dependent.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of moving parts here, right? So in China, I think there's a couple reasons to go all in. One is a security of energy piece where they don't have oil. They don't have enough oil. Yeah. So how can we transition towards personal transportation that is powered by the energy sources that we have? Yeah. So, I mean, from there, that explains a lot of all their investments in solar. They don't have a great solar resource, so it's not going to be a dead end, but they're still going to produce a hell of a lot of solar energy. Yeah. And then explains why they're still building coal plants like nobody's business. Yeah. And investing in nuclear a little bit too. Yeah. So gradually getting to a point where they're energy independent. And then you contrast that to, and I'm so glad I went to Japan in the fall for the first time. Like there's no EVs there, none. Yeah. None at all.
Yeah, you mentioned that to me, and that kind of blew my mind.
None. And it's like Toyotas everywhere. Yeah. And like a million Toyotas that you've never even seen before in all kinds of weird, strange configurations and weird buses and vans and everything. Yeah. But it's all gasoline. Yeah. Which, if you think about it, makes actually quite good sense because of how energy dense it is. Yeah. And they've got no local energy. They have to import every single thing, every single joule, right? So,
and they're the experts in fuel efficiency and just efficiency in general around how they've made that system work.
Yeah. And then so to go and completely rebuild your electricity system to accommodate that additional load, then they have to actually rethink, okay, where is that going to come from? Yeah. And so they go through the pause of nuclear, and then so they're going to have to wind that back up if they want to transition to EVs. But and then you just look at the distribution system and like how tightly packed everybody is. Yeah. And so it adds additional complexity to like all the charging. And so you have to basically remake an entire new system. Yeah. Where in China and here it's a little bit different because you're able to kind of hijack an existing system. Yeah. We already have a good amount of power entering homes. Yeah. In China, and this part we kind of underrate. China's been through so much change over the past 20 or 30 years. Culturally, I think they're just used to it. And then that's, I mean, not even mentioning the fact that from a central planning point of view,
you can try to force it.
Yeah, like NIMBY doesn't exist. It's like it's coordinate and smooth.
Yeah, you totally
and build culture. It's not is it okay if we build this?
And culture. It's funny, isn't it? Because we talk about things in sweeping generalizations. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think there's such a nuance and a regional geography piece to energy transition that people don't necessarily talk about. It's kind of very black or white in terms. So in some ways, if we think about the event, that's kind of what we're trying to get into in more detail.
I would talk about it in terms of like every region has its own resource endowment.
Yeah.
And through that endowment creates a certain bias towards how the world works.
Yep.
And then an inability to see how the world can work differently otherwise.
We're seeing this with natural gas in Alberta,
Sure.
aren't we? We've got our own biases around what we think the future should be like.
And BC has their own biases because they're just endowed with all this hydro. So it's like, oh, this is easy.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we point fingers at each other and go, why are you pursuing that particular strategy?
Yeah.
So that intrigues me. That whole kind of, how's that going to play out?
Yeah.
I think it will be interesting over, say, a 20, 30-year timeline. I would guess that when Japanese cars hit the American market in the late 70s, I'm going to guess, this before I was born, but I'm sure there would have been...
No.
They weren't well received. I'm sure there were high tariffs. But
it was also a friendly state, right? So, like, it was a partner.
At the time, would it have been viewed as a friendly state at the time?
Friendlier.
Maybe friendlier, but it would be interesting to... Maybe that's something we should both be looking at is what happened there, because long-term...
And this is back to what you said, like the importance of understanding the social aspects, and that's where history repeats and rhymes.
Yeah.
Like that's where we need to be spending a lot of time to understand the current moment, is going back in history and how do people react to new
There's unintended consequences. You think the UK pushed diesel vehicles in the late 90s as being cleaner and more fuel efficient.
Yeah.
And suddenly then you look at Dieselgate and all the cheating around emissions and go...
It was the same thing when I was in Germany.
It was idiotic, that strategy.
Yeah, like 2004, 2005. It was mostly diesel. And
Europe really pursued that.
Yeah.
And you look at the particulates and air pollution-wise, not a good strategy.
I think the other thing around EV adoption that most economists got wrong, and I've changed my view gradually on this too, not gradually. I think probably 5 or 6 years ago, the conventional thinking was EVs just had to get to cost parity to combustion engines, and then they would take over.
Yeah.
And that's not the case.
Yeah.
They're actually going to have to be way cheaper and offer up way more utility. So it's going to be closer to like Peter Thiel's like 10x value proposition as opposed to just like 1.5x.
Yeah.
And I think it's very much linked to, particularly here in North America, where like the car is so linked to personal freedom.
Yeah.
And just your ability to kind of go wherever you want to go, whenever you want to go.
Long distances. Europe's not the same, right? You don't necessarily, not that many people are going, I need 1,000 kilometers of range. You live in rural Canada, it's a totally different use case.
But it's kind of like part of the culture and the identity of the product.
Yeah.
And so any impediment or constraint around it just the user experience of it has to be that much better in order for people to get past those limitations. Even if those limitations are 3 to 4 trips a year or something like that.
Yeah.
Like we
design for those exceptions. Even though it would be far cheaper to rent a vehicle for those 3 or 4 exceptions, people don't want to do that.
No, it's psychologically too taxing.
Exactly.
It's the same thing as like a 3-row SUV and like the 2 times a year where you've got like all the kids and grandparents in one car and you feel great. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, this is
I need that massive vehicle for that scenario.
Yeah.
What's your view on the whole sharing asset model on vehicles? Because that's kind of the argument that if we're just talking about replacing internal combustion engine with electric, that's going to help, but it's not necessarily going to transform. We're still going to have to manufacture 1 billion new vehicles over the next 15, 20 years to displace a lot of the world's fleet.
Yeah.
What's your view on the sharing model where you've got vehicles being utilized from an autonomous perspective and the next generation won't be even driving?
Yeah, I think
self-driving cars.
I think in general that thesis is correct.
Yeah.
How long it's going to take to play out.
The practicalities of
But again, it'll have to be like significantly cheaper than the existing model. It can't be like 20% cheaper.
So you don't think it'll win on convenience where people go, actually, I don't even need to own a vehicle. Like if you think of our kids, because we've got similar age kids, in 15, 20 years' time, are they going to be driving their own personal vehicle or will they be, signing up to Uber of the future where they just have this access to this system that they can tap into that's electric and autonomous.
I think it's a little bit too early to tell, but like the convenience would have to be so much better, not just like a little bit better, and not like take care of like 80% of their trips. It would have to be a higher percentage.
That to me massively moves the needle. If that is realized,
it does. And I mean, this is like,
that's the Tony Seba kind of
that's right
view of the future, right? That's what really unlocks. Takes vehicle utilization from 5% to 90%. And you don't need as many vehicles.
It does one other thing too, is it takes away the driver's seat.
Yeah.
So then I think it was a while since I've looked at these stats, but it was like 85 to 90% of vehicle trips are 2 people and less.
Yeah.
So you just have like a bunch of like smart car size things.
Well, you're driving a 2-ton vehicle that for one person commuting, it's kind of, we've also got the challenge that we don't have, the public transport here is nothing like in Europe or China or Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another factor that obviously plays into.
Yeah, and there's only pockets that have the density to support it.
Exactly.
Have you tried the latest full self-driving?
I have.
Tesla?
Yeah, I have. I find it really unnerving. What about yourself? Have you tried it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your views?
It's a step change improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah, like because I've had it for 6 years now.
Yeah.
So like the last update.
You've had FSD for 6 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were one of the early adopters.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to see.
Yeah. I definitely find myself intervening probably more than I need to. Do you know what I find strange about it is it drives very close to the curb and the sidewalks. So, and it doesn't read the road, obviously, because it can't see if there's...
You haven't seen it improve just in the past 2 weeks?
You know what? I actually haven't tried it for the last kind of 10 days. This is the last time I would have used it was probably 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks? But it was like FSD 12, right? Like the new
I think
approach?
It would have been, yeah, I think it would have been FSD 12.
Okay.
I think, on this check, yeah.
Okay.
I may be behind on my software update.
Okay. Because now it's much more human-like. It's like it's behaving like a human.
I put it in aggressive mode when I tried it as well. So
yeah.
I probably need to try it more. I don't know. Maybe that's my old school mentality. I want to drive myself, and but I'm sure it's going to get a lot better, obviously, because they're getting more and more data.
Yeah, I think the interesting part of the approach is that at the moment now they're just they're tracking interventions, and they're able to just track around the interventions and then improve the model from there.
Yeah, and you can give feedback, obviously, in real time when that happens via audio.
It's not the easiest to do, but
it's not the easiest to do. I did try it. It's a bit awkward. The interface.
But yeah, it does feel like for a long time it was like 2 years away, but actually 10. But now it's maybe closer to 2 years away.
Let's hope so. I think that would be a massive breakthrough if that's realized. That's obviously, I think, one of Musk's kind of cornerstone strategies for Tesla is to unlock that. So you're not a car company, you're a service, technology service provider.
Yeah.
Fully.
Going back to when you founded EDU, what is a view that you held at that time, like a really strongly held view that's like completely different now?
The first one that comes to mind is that you set something up, you found something, it needs to be a wild success within...
Sorry, I meant within energy or within the space of energy.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant about the actual journey of EDU.
No.
Oh, that's a good question. I need to think back to kind of 2017. Do you know, one of the first things would have been that I wasn't even sure there was a market for the content we were going to be producing. Actually, we did not know if there were only 50 people who were going to show up and even engage with the summit. So probably the biggest thing was actually, now we know that there is an audience there that want to engage and want to learn more about this and want to contribute.
And probably more of an audience in traditional energy.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, it's hard to say because we haven't done anything directly in that traditional space. So if we did something in that world, will we get more people showing up? I don't know.
Yeah.
But that has massively surprised us.
Yeah.
We didn't know that in 2017.
What are some of the boring energy problems that we should be spending more time on?
Well, you go to like a Smil, it would be energy efficiency and things like insulation and
Yeah,
better design of things.
yeah.
It's the unsexy stuff, the boring stuff, better windows. That's the
I think
stuff.
windows are
Yeah,
that's my number one.
no one wants to hear that probably.
Triple pane windows is
Triple
like
pane windows, upgrading insulation, all that kind of stuff is probably the
yeah,
thing that, anything energy efficiency related
yeah,
is low hanging fruit if we can, use energy in a better way.
yeah.
But people want to talk about the wacky stuff of fusion and, flying cars and
Mhm.
direct air capture because it's for whatever reason, it's more appealing to human nature.
Tell me about your friend Vaclav Smil. Your new
Don't know my friend. I mean, that's been surreal getting to know him.
Yeah,
So that, not just with respect to Vaclav, but just some of the people that we've been working with and interacting with, and that's been crazy.
yeah,
Someone had said to me in 2016, 2017, you're going to go off and do all this stuff. I would not have believed it.
hmm
So when I'm interacting with people like Vaclav, I feel very dumb is the first thing I say.
yeah.
Trying to even keep pace with how he thinks. And I mean,
Does he?
it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Does he? I wonder how that is. Like you're that much smarter than everybody else. You probably know that you're that much smarter than everybody else, but you still
He's on a different plane.
Right. But he obviously made you feel comfortable, and
he did absolutely. I mean, he's an absolute gentleman. That's the thing that's just struck me about him. He's just, it's very surreal because he's the type of person who's like, yeah, just give me a call.
Right.
And so yeah, I mean,
what's he interested in that kind of surprised you?
Do you know what surprised me is just he's just so prolific. I think he's absolutely obsessed with writing. So I think when you see past interviews of him talking about what's he into and passionate about, that is it, right? I think I get the sense he's got a pretty simple life where he's consumed by knowledge and curiosity and writing.
Yeah.
I think this is on public record. He's very passionate about cooking. And he just strikes me as someone who's just got a view that, he's fully in a state of flow and focused on his writing. That's, I think, his number one priority and objective.
How do you think he does his research? Right? Like he's not on social media, but he's clearly on the internet to be able to
of course,
to get access to all the info that he does. He's reading all these papers.
I think that's the main thing. He's reading a huge volume of scientific papers.
Yeah.
I think he's also just a voracious reader of quite an eclectic mix of books and topics. And so, and I suppose the other thing that struck me is he's just so consistent. So, I got the sense from him he's writing every single day.
Yeah.
So if you do that over a 50, 60-year period, that's the bit that people don't recognize, I think, in anything where you've seen exceptional success on that people have had. So much of it is just the consistency.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of his work went unrecognized in the early part of his career. And obviously when Gates then started to speak about him and his work, suddenly he's built this very engaged audience.
Yeah.
But that was quite late in life. That wasn't, that was really only in the last 20 years that happened.
Yeah.
He was doing this
it's not changed him one bit.
It's not changed him. I don't get the sense it's changed him whatsoever.
Yeah.
But you've got to think for a 30, 40-year period, he was doing this without that recognition.
And I think you were mentioning this. He's got like a couple books on the go too, right? It's not like I've just got one project.
Yeah, I believe he's got 2 or 3 things that he's writing right now. Yeah. So really remarkable.
Yeah.
And again, super surreal that I've our team have just had these ridiculous experiences where we're getting to work with some really remarkable people.
I think for me, the quintessential little essay that I read of his that has like stuck with me the most was this. He used to write for IEEA.
Yeah.
It'd be like a monthly thing, or like, I don't know, 5 or 6 times a year. And he just wrote this piece about like, what is a wind turbine?
Yeah.
And effectively, a wind turbine is a fossil fuel machine.
Yeah.
So he just goes through every single material that is required to build a wind turbine.
Yeah.
And then
there's a lot of material inputs that go into that.
No, but once you actually think a little bit more deeply about that, like wind can't make wind, solar can't make solar, a battery can't make battery. Everything still goes back to fossil fuels every single time. And
you got to dig something up. You know, that's the reality. You're either digging up oil or you're digging up some sort of other material.
Yep.
So part of the program this year is about this whole material challenge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you could make a very strong case that energy transition is a mining problem primarily, and a supply chain challenge. And that's something that's really kind of, I think, intriguing. And for whatever reason, we just don't make that connection back to the material inputs.
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet.
But it's. I always think about this, this concept around like expensive fossil fuels make expensive renewables, because still fundamentally, like, you need them to make the thing.
Yeah.
So by vilifying the industry, you're still shooting yourself in the foot.
I get it though. Why? I mean, it's an easy target, obviously.
Yeah.
Is the first thing, and there is some very justified criticism with some of the behaviors. So it's difficult, right? Because I understand why people in the industry get pissed off and frustrated and feel it's unfair. But I also, the industry doesn't help itself with certain actions, and where you're not seeing enough transparency. And we tend to lump the industry together as one.
Sure.
There's really good actors and there's bad actors, like any industry. And we tend to conflate the two things.
And lump the industry into combustion.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which it's not.
And oil and gas, exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And we, again, conflate these two things.
Yeah.
Where there is obviously a lot of nuance and differences between good and bad actors.
Yeah.
What's the stuff that, if you look at the current energy landscape, what are things that you're paying attention to you think more people should be looking at and be aware of?
I think people should pay attention more to human behavior.
Yeah.
And then even pay attention to human behaviors of advocates.
Yeah.
And I think it's completely underestimated the degree of societal change that would be required. Yeah. Right? Like, take an Arc'teryx jacket, take a mountain bike, take all the materials in an EV. It still links back to oil and gas every single time. Yeah. And so many behaviors in day-to-day life are still linked back to that. Yeah. And so I think it's just going to be so much slower. So much slower. The other thing that I've been thinking about a lot, and I was going to ask you about this, was why we're so disinterested in climate adaptation. So, there and
people get very angry about this.
Yeah.
Because they go, well, if we're going down the adaptation road, it's sending like a message. It's denying the reality that we're in, that we're burning all these fossil fuels, and we've got 40 gigatons of CO2 going into the atmosphere each year, and we're consuming 100 million barrels.
Yeah.
It's the same reason people get angry about geoengineering.
Yeah.
They go, we need to focus on reducing emissions and reducing combustion. We shouldn't be talking about adaptation and
the crazy thing is, like, if everything stops today, we still have
huge tail,
90 years of tail.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then so for 90 years, we're just gonna take it.
Yeah.
We're just gonna live in the same spots. We're gonna breathe forest fire air. We're gonna be in flood zones. Like, we're not gonna.
I think it's another example of this. We live in a very black and white world where you're either with me or against me. And that's, I don't think, helpful. And pick your topic. It could be education, medical related, energy related.
Yeah.
How do we depolarize these discussions and actually recognize that complex problems rarely need simple solutions? Normally it's going to be a complex, difficult, challenging solution, and you're going to need multiple solutions to be able to fix the problem.
Yeah.
But people don't want to hear that. They just want to hear the silver bullet.
Or try to understand it.
And that's not fair. There's a portion of society that doesn't want to hear it. And it's also recognizing that the people that are very angry about this stuff, I don't necessarily think they represent the majority of people.
Mm-hmm.
They're extremely noisy online.
Mm-hmm.
They draw a lot of attention. But I don't necessarily think once you sit down with people face to face, you actually, most of us recognize we have more in common with each other than our differences. Yeah. And it's okay for us to have a disagreement of you have a certain belief and I don't. Yeah. It'd be a pretty fucking weird world if we held the same views on everything.
Especially for something that's so uncertain as to how it's going to play out.
Yeah. And there should be some intellectual debate.
Yeah.
On a totally unrelated topic, I just finished a book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. I don't know whether you've seen this.
No, I haven't seen it yet.
So it's the #1 New York Times bestselling book. And back to your point around human behavior, it's basically the premise of the book is that social media and access to phones has kind of fucked up adolescence. Yeah. And really you're seeing rising rates of mental health problems for particularly kids in the kind of 11 to 15-year-old range.
Yeah.
And this book is kind of really about how do we fix this, and this is causing a huge amount of problems.
No, I shouldn't say that. I do know about this book, and I listened to a podcast with him on Tyler Cohen's podcast.
Yeah,
it was probably a month ago.
Yeah.
And actually, Tyler pushed back quite a bit. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
We're very early on in all this stuff.
There's a lot of research, though. It's well worth a read, but it gets me thinking about things like climate catastrophism. Mm-hmm. You know, we have a challenge where you've got generation who are living in this world where they're going, I'm hearing that it's going to be the end of the world and we're all doomed. And I don't think that's helpful for trying to fix the problem. No. I get why we've always, as a species, been drawn towards this kind of apocalyptic scenarios.
Why don't you think there's a more positive story that's emerged? Or a more positive project to work towards?
Because I think that, and I forget the exact data, but is it not that you're 10 times more likely to pay attention to negative news than positive news? Mm. So I think it's just human
It's higher.
nature.
It's high, yeah.
It's much higher. It's like it's
the survival instinct thing that just I need to know threats.
It's why when you open the paper in the morning or you go online, it's not filled with, it tends to be a lot of negative.
Yeah.
So I think naturally we're drawn to this.
Yeah.
I think we live in a world where you have this 24-hour feed of information as well. So when you combine those factors, and rightly, there's people trying to change this and raise the alarm, and activism can have a positive role in the world.
Yeah.
But I think when it tips into climate catastrophism, that's not helpful.
And I would say that you've stayed isolated from this. You're very positive and optimistic person. What does your daily routine look like to just gather information, stay up to date?
Do you know I know you're on Twitter quite a bit, or certainly consume
passively. Yeah.
Passively.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I don't have any social media.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff I learn, I read quite a lot. I probably read 50 to 60 books a year.
Yeah.
And normally they're quite boring. They're kind of business or energy-related types of books.
How do you know what to read? Or how do you decide what to read?
You know what? The other data point is I would have 20 to 30 coffee meetings a week with a lot of very eclectic range of people.
20 to 30?
A week, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you actually think of that, I'm having 1,000 coffee meetings a year. So if you think of that one data point.
How much is linked to Scale Blaze and how much is linked to just your interests?
I would say 20% would be related to the executive search business, and the other balance is just interesting people that either reach out to me or I want to connect with. Yeah. And I've done that for the last 6-7 years. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So that's actually the main thing. People will then say to me, hey, have you read this book? Or have you met this certain person? Or are you aware of this?
So you wait for, well, either you really trust the person and you're like, yep, I
Yeah,
need to
not
read that. Or
everything's
like,
going to be,
once you hear the same recommendation 2 or 3 times, it's like, yeah, I need to.
That's exactly it. So it's very old school kind of human intelligence, I suppose that would be called.
Huh.
So that's really unusual, but that's.
And used to, I know we've gone on for like walking meetings. How many of those are walk meetings?
Obviously more so in the summer. I mean, if the weather's good, probably 30-40% of them. So some of them would be obviously Zoom meetings if it's people who are not based in Calgary. But I have a lot of coffee meetings. Yeah, I have a ridiculous tea budget each year. Yeah.
Huh.
I'm like super loyalty member at all the shop. It's pretty bad when you go into a coffee shop here and they know my name before I've even ordered, and they've got my tea prep before I've even said what I want.
I wanted to talk about Scale Blaze a little bit, actually, because I've been increasingly interested in just talent and how you find talent, evaluate talent. Like describe the contents of like an ideal resume, for example, or the ideal cover letter where you can scan, because how many have you gone through now? Thousands, probably.
Thousands for sure. Yeah.
You can tell how long does it take to scan through to know?
You know what's funny? I don't put a lot of weight on resumes or cover letters, to be honest. It's I would say much more of the weight I'd put on someone's candidacy for a role would be on how they show up and the meeting.
In the conversation in the meeting.
100%.
Okay.
I actually think the majority of people are terrible at writing resumes.
Yeah.
I'd say 90+% of the resumes I get are terrible. Really poorly written. Not grammatically, spelling's all correct, all that kind of stuff.
Poorly structured and...
Poorly structured. It's almost like there's this myth that we have to have a 2-page resume. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost like you've got this sanitized version of people's careers over and over and over again. Same information, same format. Most people just list their responsibilities.
Yeah.
The resumes that really stand out are when people do something quite radically different on the format or the information they include.
And at that point, you almost always probably look at all of it.
I'm intrigued by that point. Yeah. And I think personalizing things a lot more. It's almost like we've gone to this world of keywords and how am I going to optimize my resume for online? I don't think that's... if you're a mid-career hire and above, I don't think you should be doing that. I don't think you should be optimizing for keywords.
How do you approach how somebody's showing? So you have a coffee meeting with somebody or you have a phone call or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you... how do you prepare for that particular conversation? And then,
to me, it's normally very telling how well prepared someone is coming into conversation. So even quite simple things like if we're representing a certain client, okay, tell me what you know about them. And even that simple thing is your first data point. Because if someone's actually made the effort to properly go and understand what are they like, not just here's a generic description of the company. The people that really impress me are the ones that come in and they've gone, I've actually made 3 or 4 phone calls and done some digging to understand what the reputation of your client is. That really interests me when people, will actually go above and beyond on their prep immediately. That they're going to be on our radar as someone that we should be looking at.
I'm guessing you weigh references quite high, like as a lot of weight, or no?
Yes, but there's nuance to the references. So who have they given and almost what are they not saying in the reference is just as important as the answers you're getting. And there's a real skill to having good referencing conversations. So, some of that is the experience of having done, and I don't do the references generally myself. We have one of our team members who's exceptional at references who has been doing this, references the last kind of 15, 20 years. So there's a consistency with how we would do our references.
Yeah.
But I'm curious as well, because one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is habits and high performance. And I know this is something that you're interested in.
Yeah.
What can I learn from you where you go, what are the habits that you've implemented over the last couple of years that have helped you with running your business and everything you're doing? Because you're a busy guy and you're doing a lot of kind of interesting stuff.
Yeah. I don't feel right if I'm not active.
So that's the first piece. That's the foundation,
That's
or one
the
of.
that's yeah, that's one of. That's like a very basic primary tenet, I would
Because you
say.
become a running maniac, basically. 6 days a week, you were telling me.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Um, and I guess it's there's a couple things happening, right? Like I get a lot of good ideas
Yeah.
when I'm running. It's actually it's an AI app or a Siri app or something like that
Yeah.
that I would be quite interested in, to be able to just like
Download
my consciousness somehow
Yeah.
into or to be able to
So they
verbalize
could
stuff
take
into
out the heavy breathing. So
precisely, yeah.
depending on the type of run.
Yeah. It's also weird because it's like you can't plan for a particular run to be the one to have the good ideas.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre thing. It just kind of, today's the day or not the day.
So if you have a good idea, will you then, when you get home, will you immediately write it down or start to action it? What's normally the first step?
Yeah. So I write it down. I try to write it down, and it's not until you go to write it down whether you actually determine whether it's a good idea or not.
Yeah.
If you try to write it down and then it turns out to be bullshit, then it's a bullshit idea.
Yeah.
So actually, just the action of writing it
Yeah.
is
Will
quite a
validate
filter.
whether it's
It's a
worth.
filter
Yeah.
for sure.
Interesting. So that's one piece. What other things have you found helpful?
I mean, it's funny. So like if I optimize for running performance, then everything else kind of like falls into line, because you're at that point, you're paying attention to recovery and to sleep and to diet.
Yeah.
And anything that kind of takes away from that then is detrimental.
Yeah.
So then like once that's in place, then it's almost certain.
All the other habits stack on top of that, basically.
It's almost certain that the rest of the day is productive.
Yeah. I feel like I need to take up running. Everyone I know who runs has found it so beneficial.
It's, I mean, yeah.
I need to take about twice the number of steps as you, because I'm about half your height. So
you'd be surprised. I've got like this tiny little cadence, and I've got kind of shorter legs for how tall I am. It
confuses people.
Yeah, just kind of plod along. But I mean, yeah, back to running. I mean, this is a lot of the stuff I've learned over the past couple of years taking it up. It's like so much of it is just like time on foot. So, it'd be interesting to see if you were able to adjust, because you play squash and you probably feel like you puked to like that you had a good workout.
Yeah.
Where so much of it is like you can't do that and recover.
So slower level, like zone 2, almost zone 3 training.
Even some zone 1 stuff, like and it's just it's time on foot and being slow with it. And then I mean, when I first started out, maximum like 1 workout a week.
Yeah.
And then now it's like probably sometimes 2, depending on how training's going or whatever. But for the most part, the other times it's just like time on foot, and you can listen to a podcast or listen to music, or phone calls are actually quite good. Like if I'm doing something slow enough, and that's a good time to catch up with people. Yeah, but I mean, just
but
for how much,
way, but
not
you can
about
optimize
because
your time.
Because of how much volume I'm putting in.
So my latest thing is I just got an Aura ring 3 days ago. So I'm kind of interested to see stress levels. I think one of the things I'm trying to work on is how do I get better at managing the pressure and stress of running the summit and the financial pressure, and just probably my own pressure of expectation on how good it should be.
Yeah. And
I'm noticing that that's one of the things that I'm really trying to think about more, is that the first 3 have taken so much out of us, and it felt very difficult.
Yeah.
It's like almost difficult births of these events.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is figure out, how do we do this in a way that's not as stressful, it's not the same extremity of emotion. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of my next thing that I'm really trying to figure out and work on.
I think you're going to like it. I've had mine for probably 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I'm
I mean,
too.
it would be simple for you because you've
So,
taken out alcohol.
someone had to buy me this as a gift, right? Michelle bought this as a birthday present because I'm too cheap to buy one. But finally, I've got my Oura ring.
You'll start mapping stuff out that's kind of interesting. You'll see like, oh, if I eat a bunch of red meat later in the evening, I'll have a shit sleep. Yeah. I think you'll probably see some interesting things.
Fingers crossed. Let's see.
Yeah. I still like it. I mean, I can tell at this point whether I've slept well or I'm doing the right things. But I think initially there was a lot of learning.
Yeah, I'm in that phase. A few days in.
Yeah.
And what about you? What are you most excited for with the event coming up? Is anyone you've been surprised by that we've announced, or there's certain content streams that you're wanting to see us explore?
So the geopolitical stuff I love.
Yeah.
So
the Brunos of the world.
Brunos of the world. I mean, I can't say enough about just the work that he does and the amount of travel that he does. And it's just like, it's kind of insane how much knowledge you can gain just by basically reading every one of the words that he writes.
Yeah.
He's just like, feels like I'm giving away knowledge here, like that I shouldn't be, but to a certain, like he is so right, like 3 months ahead of time.
Yeah.
That it's kind of,
he's a bit of a savant, isn't he, with kind of what's happening geopolitically in the world.
And I think so much of it has to do with how much he travels, how curious he is about different cultures, his understanding of history, to basically have some imagination for the current moment.
And for the people who, because we've just been referencing Bruno, but his last name is Macaish, which is spelled Macaes. His book's right here, isn't it? Yeah, I remember correctly. Yeah. So for the people who aren't familiar, because we keep referencing him without. Yeah. But
so how prominent is he going to be?
Well, we got to talk about that. Yeah, we got to figure out all the logistics.
Okay.
But I think we'd like him to join one of the sessions with Sanna Marin, because obviously, she brought Finland into NATO and was in the front line of all of the kind of craziness.
They probably know each other.
I would think they may have crossed paths before.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that after.
Okay. Offline.
Offline. Yeah. But I'm excited for Bruno to come back again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the stuff that I'm interested in. I guess in general, like I just get stimulated by trying to forecast what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then
that's the trader in you.
Yeah, it's just like I just get a like this amount of utility about like kind of being right about something early or
You're an early adopter on things, and
just generally I'm into I would say
like your Trump prediction. We got it on record. It's
on
May
record.
14th.
Yeah. It was on data centers a year ago. I guess this is another example.
Well, you'll flag things to me that it's really useful, right? Because that early filter on certain things is super helpful. Because that's also one of the things that we're trying to do is almost predict where the content should be in 3, 4, 5, 6 months time, which is quite difficult because you're having to make the decisions now.
Yeah.
And there will be certain parts of the program we leave super late, which frustrates the engineers who attend the event because they want the program 2 years out and every minute of detail. Mm-hmm. So we always get this tension where, we're trying to leave things quite late so it feels really current.
We haven't talked about this, so there's probably room for like a history stream.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that because one of the people we can't announce might be a very well-known historian.
Okay. Amazing.
I can't say anymore.
Yeah. But I think it's very much linked to like what, how are people reacting at that particular time to something new? Yeah. Like that's the stuff that rhymes.
Yeah. Well, we talk about the Japanese car thing, right? It'd be pretty interesting. 50 years later.
Sure.
I'm sure many of the dynamics of what happened at that time, that there'll be some parallels with China. We saw it with Korean vehicles. And people tend to kind of go, well, they'll never get the quality right. China's not going to be able to deliver a product that I think that's bollocks. Like you're seeing the qualities there.
Yeah.
And you're then normally the consumer wins out in these scenarios in the long term.
Yeah.
Is generally what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to the best consumer product's going to scale globally.
I mean, yeah, even you would think all the IP that's being developed there will cross the Pacific eventually. It'll just take a little bit longer.
Well, all the Western manufacturers have been relying on the CATL.
Which ones are going to go out of business, do you think?
It depends on what time scale. Over the next 15, 20 years, a ton of them. A ton of the domestic Western.
Yeah.
Because I think they're going to get their lunch eaten by the Koreans and Chinese at the low and mid-level markets.
Yeah.
The luxury brands are probably going to be protected longer because of the legacy. And you could argue as well, EV plus luxury makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. And I think the Fords, the GMs, I think the FCAs, I think they could be in real trouble. Mm-hmm. I think we might be surprised that I could see a number of them out of business in the next decade.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probable. I'm not sure who it's going to be, but how's your squash game these days? Are you healthy or are you still hurt?
Do you know what? So I'm so happy to be back playing.
Oh, good.
So still like niggly injuries, but it just feels great to be back on court.
Yeah.
I think I'm 21 in my head, mm-hmm. and
what's your body saying?
My body doesn't agree with that whatsoever. So
how was the conversation between the two these days?
Not good. Better this year. I was out of action for 9 months last year, and I'm terrible if I'm not exercising, and so I put on a bunch of weight and felt very out of shape. And so it's been nice to get it. I'm not fully back, but it's just been nice playing again.
Okay, we'll get up for some.
The joy of you take it for granted, right, when you're healthy.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Good.
Awesome.
Thanks,
cool.
Graeme.
This is a wrap.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Energy Untold. Energy Untold is produced by Shortline Creative and recorded at GBE Energy. Art is curated with the assistance of Norbert Hall. For more information on the show, visit energyuntold.com. We would love your feedback. Send us a message at hello@energyuntold.com. Thank you again, and until next time, I am Corey Paddock.